back up and help you read all this paper. Thank you. So I totally set Courtney up because it drives me freaking nuts when people think I'm fearless. I mean, there's almost nothing that like makes my blood boil more than when they go, well, I can't do that because you're fearless. Because the truth is that my entire life has been full of fear. So I grew up with my grandparents. My mother died when I was 12. I got bounced around. I just didn't have a place in the world, and I didn't have any self-esteem or any sense of confidence. To the point that in high school, at least knew the value of studying hard and getting good grades, but I didn't even apply to college. I didn't know what that really meant. I didn't think I belonged. There was no way I was going to put myself out there and say, hey, you good school, pick me. I did not apply to college, and I graduated in the top 10% of my class in a huge school right outside of Houston in an affluent area. We weren't, but the area was. It's where the NASA kids went. The reason I got into college was because everybody else seemed to be registering for this SAT thing. So I went and I took the test, and you had to fill out some bubbles about colleges, and I was like, well, I'm in Houston. Fill out Houston. I got an application back that was pretty much filled out. So I, signed it and filled in a few other things and sent it back. And then I got another application to the honors program, pretty much filled out. And they said they wanted a writing sample. I'd written a few papers, sent it back. That's the story of how I got into college, okay? I'm not full of confidence. I'm not this total trailblazer that people think that I am. I did stay at University of Houston for about 2 years, and every single class I went to, I was like, oh, look at all these other people, they have to be smarter than me. I'm not, how am I gonna make it through this? And every single time, just by applying myself, I would get one of the best grades in the class. I ended up deciding, I was really fascinated by all things international, and in Texas, international only means Mexico. So I did get the gall to apply to only one school that I thought just maybe would take me, and that was American University in DC, and I moved there. And I was so intimidated by everybody else. They call AU a Jew. There's a lot of very wealthy Jewish people. I'd never met a Jewish person in my life, being from Texas. They had the royal Bahrainis there, all of the royalty went to school there. Everyone drove a Mercedes. There was we called them the Latin Mafia, but the wealthy Latins that could afford to come to American University. And then there was the nouveau riche from Russia, seriously, wearing minks and asking me hey, I'll give you $500 if you write my paper for me. It was very, very tempting because my checking account often got down to $10. And my roommates were saying to their parents on the phone, this $500 a month just isn't enough, Mom or Dad. I'm like, how do you, the perspective is so different. But somehow, even though I was afraid of everything and afraid of everyone and convinced I didn't belong, I just put my head down and I studied. And I got a call one day, and someone from the administration asked me, are you willing to carry the flag of the business school at graduation? And I thought for sure this was some kind of punishment. I don't understand, why do you want me to do this? I'm well, you are graduating first in the class. Wow. So I walked the flag down, and there was no one at my graduation. No family members, no other friends than who was in my class that I knew. So talk about really being out there and being on your own, I felt it. And fortunately, I moved to California, I'd met someone, moved to California, got to working, and then decided, everyone else around me has an MBA. And I'm just a small little girl with braces, and I look like I'm 18 when I'm 25, So I decided to apply to business school, and at least I said, I'm only going to apply to business schools I really want to go to. But I thought there was no way in hell they were going to accept me. Because I was also applying with only a few years of experience, and they usually want 6 to 8. And I got into UCLA, and I got into Berkeley. And I completely shocked myself. So again, it wasn't about, I have confidence. It was I was doing things despite not having confidence. Few different work opportunities, all very wonderful. Found myself yet again in a situation where I was completely intimidated. I was applying to a job, for Allen Bill and Associates, an investment consulting firm, to manage $7 billion with a B of union pension assets. I would be the person calling the shots. I would be the person in front of a room of this many people, but they're all carpenters, they're plumbers, they're big, they're intimidating, they don't trust Wall Street, sometimes they're pissed when you deliver bad investment results. Why on earth would I think that I could do a job like that? But I came back to, I'm going to accurately represent myself. This is what I can do, this is what I have done. No, I can't guarantee I'll like this job, I've never done it before, but just being honest, I let them make the decision about whether or not that role was good for me. And it ended up being great, and that they really seemed to trust me and resonate with my message and the way that I delivered results and solicited their input. But one thing that was really interesting was, in between that job and the prior one, I took 7 weeks off, and just fast forward, you don't get the story of how I started climbing or how I slowly and methodically built my skills and built my confidence there, but I had the opportunity to go try to climb an 8,000 meter peak. 8,000 meters is 26,500 feet or higher. And I went for it. And my goal was not to get myself killed. It wasn't to summit. It was to learn and take advantage of that opportunity. I went completely untrained. I mean, look at me anyways. I don't have a climber physique, right? And I go untrained. And I'm just like, I'm going to do as much as I can do. I'm going to go as far as I can go. If I summit, it will be the biggest coup on the planet. But I don't want to die doing this, right? Like, I've got that grounding that I love climbing, but I never want to die. I want to keep climbing. And when I came back, I did a slideshow for my new employer. I was like, thank you for extending my start date to give me this opportunity. And the president of the company, after the slideshow, looked at me and said, no wonder you aren't afraid of the trustees. Because I told a story of how I had to go from advanced base camp at 18,500 feet alone to Camp 1 around 21,000 feet. And that's because I was a slower, weaker team member, so I couldn't go all the way to Camp 2 for that rotation, because you climb high, sleep low, and you keep climbing higher and sleeping low to give your body to acclimatize. So I needed to go to Camp 1 alone and have my team members come that morning, and we would go to Camp 2 together. I couldn't do it all in one day. So there are these crevasses, these cracks, and there are sometimes fixed lines over them, but sometimes there are crevasses that surprise you, and sometimes you might punch in or something goes wrong. So I had radio contact with my partner, and I would say, because we all kind of knew the lay of the land, crevasse number 1, you copy, copies. Cross it, come across and say, clear, copy. So I knew that he knew it, crossed it. If he didn't hear from me again, there would probably be problems. Or if I said, crossing crevasse number 4, and there's no answer on the other side, at least someone would know where I was. You can die pretty quickly from the cold inside a crevasse, but it's guaranteed I would be dead by the next morning if they had noticed me only when they came up to get me and go on to Camp 2. That night I spent alone at Camp 1 in one of the most inhospitable places in the world. And because there had been a bit of temperature variation, things loosened up overnight. And I heard seracs, big chunks of ice, and avalanches coming down all around me. And I would open up the tent, look, and see where is it coming from. Okay, I'm safe that time. I took a self-portrait of myself. And like the fear, you can just see in a way that like you've never seen on somebody else's face. And I wrote a goodbye letter to my boyfriend because I really wasn't sure I was going to last the night. And I had all these internal debates about, do I just try to go back down, but I don't have radio contact now, no one will know what happened to me if they come and I wasn't at the tent. Or do I stay and keep my fingers crossed and my helmet on, even though a big avalanche wouldn't help me a single bit, but maybe a chunk of ice could save me. And another avalanche came down and I opened the tent fly and it was pea soup. I couldn't see where it was coming from. And I think back to those kinds of experiences whenever I'm afraid of getting a parking ticket, of doing a presentation, of going for a promotion where I'm not sure if I'm qualified, of asking my now boyfriend of 5 years if he was interested in me. what is the harm that can happen? If you think about the things that give you fear and feel really risky to you, and you take it one step forward, say, what if I actually do that? Think about it. What do you really want that you're holding yourself back out of fear? So now it's an incredibly empowering thing. I've done these talks for about 4 or 5 years in keynotes all over the country, and I felt like a fraud. I felt like a poser for a long time because the risk that I was telling everyone else they should feel comfortable going out and exploring and pushing through their own situations, the risk that I was feeling that I was the most afraid of was financial insecurity, because I have no family and I'm on my own, and I've always been so driven to get the good grades and get the right job so I can take care of myself. But I was dying inside by working in the investment world and working with, you can delete this, with a bunch of assholes. And I realized I was compromising my ethics. Even if I was doing the right thing for my clients, it wasn't an environment that I wanted to spend all of my energy in, and that I needed so badly to get into the mountains to decompress from. So maybe I belong in the mountains. And maybe all of this, for years I also did a ton of free guiding and leading trips and organizing because I loved it. And then finally I was like, wow, what if I got paid for this? That would kind of be awesome. So that led me to really take a hard look at how I was holding myself back. And it just so happened I was on the advisory board for this women's adventure company called Call of the Wild. You all have your brochures. I didn't start it. I was 4 when it started. It's been around for a while. And I took the plunge, and I bought it. And I moved to Bend to get my cost of living down to run it. I mean, that's like crazy talk. That is serious crazy talk, to think that I could run my own company and make a living doing stuff that I love. Doesn't that sound crazy? But I gave it a shot. And that's where it's not that I'm fearless, it's that I've faced my fears. So I didn't want to flop that around, but I'm going to finish with the last paragraph from that chapter. So after having that experience that was on Mount Sill, I now think about the worst that can happen. And it's usually not that terrible after all. Then I think about what's the best thing that can happen and ask myself if it's worth the risk. Given the low chance of inflicting injury or death upon others or myself, it's getting harder and harder not to follow my dreams as a result of my fear. Fearlessness is about finding courage to live your life, to create your own story. So with that, I hope I've inspired you to think about what you really want to do and how your fear might be holding you back. But not just that. I'm really excited to bring Layla McGlone up because she's a life and health coach, and she's going to lead us in an exercise that maybe, just maybe, will help you start taking the first step.